Please be seated.
Your Honour, Commissioners, this is the Royal Commission's 54th case study. This public hearing will... I should just say also that in relation to the point that Mr. O'Brien, you made, and Mr. Spinks as well, I think, and that's that a person can become inactive without disassociating and in that way not be shunned. Now, without going through that evidence again, I just want to say to you that that's highly contested by a lot of people as to whether that is possible. I know you say that's the case. A lot of other people say it isn't.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood, but...
The simple point is, and I'll let you respond, but I'm not going to go down this path we went down it before. The simple point is this. A person who does not want to be active in the organisation anymore, in order to avoid being shunned, must disassociate. There isn't a category of membership of inactive and nevertheless welcome.
Sorry, Mr. Stewart, that's...
I know you disagree. That's
well,
fine.
When we've put it in print, I mean...
The only point I'm making is that that's not accepted.
Again, and I apologise, Your Honour has said we're repeating the point, but we have a very clear understanding of the difference between someone being inactive, no longer an active member of the congregation, and someone who takes a decision to disassociate. That's clear to us, but we agree to disagree.
Going on to the question of redress, you don't actually have a policy with regard to how to handle claims that are brought against the organisational claims made, not necessarily in a court, but someone says, look, I was abused in the organisation one way or another. I want compensation for this. I want it to be dealt with. You don't have a policy that deals with that, do you?
We're certainly in the process of developing that, particularly since the release of the paper on redress from the Royal Commission. We've studied that and we're basically in agreement with many of the proposals in there. We don't take the view that we're waiting just until we hear the final thing, but there still are a number of questions that it seems to have to be resolved.
And that's this 2015 Royal Commission report on redress and civil litigation that you're referring to, is that
yes,
right?
That's right.
Okay, so that's been around for a couple of years now, but in short, you're saying you're working on a policy which we can expect at some stage?
Well, it's only in recent months we have had one request some time ago, probably more than a year ago, that we corresponded back with, and the claimant changed the solicitors they were using. So it's only just in the last, this week, the last few days, that we've received a report back from the...
Well, never mind individual cases. Can I just understand this from you? Is it the case that you're working on a redress policy and one can expect to see one in due course?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. And has the organisation engaged with or reached a position on the Commonwealth Government's proposed national redress scheme that was announced in November last year?
No, not at this stage. Could I raise a question on this, which is of concern to us in being able to address this issue of redress, Mr. Stewart? Would that be acceptable?
Well, let's hear what it is, Mr. O'Brien, and then I can tell you whether we can answer it or not.
Okay, so with regard to the finding of the Royal Commission, with our bringing in all of the case files that we had, because of their being investigated, the finding was that makes all of them institutional abuse, even though the greater majority of them were not actually according to the terms outlined in the redress scheme as being institutional. So there's two implications for that I would see. One of them for us as an organisation, if the number of case files is the basis for determining maybe our share in a redress scheme, we would feel that would be not in the interest of being fair and adequate, because
You needn't worry about it. Your organisation
came clearly within our terms of reference, because we are required to look at the response of your organisation.
Yeah, which we don't contest.
And that response, of course, when inadequate, will cause damage to people. You understand that?
We understand, yes, that's a response.
And from the evidence that we've had, that is likely to have happened. You may not be an organisational abuser as such, but the response of your organisation may have compounded, indeed very much compounded, the damage to that individual. As far as the redress scheme is concerned, if it takes the form, or roughly the form the Commission has recommended, your liability will be determined on a case-by-case basis,
right,
and you will be contributing on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, so that's... If
the files that we send off to the police, well, may or may not represent a part of your liability. I don't know.
Okay, so according to then the terms set out, I think it's on page 38 on the redress and civil liability, the recommendations, it outlined just what constituted institutional abuse. If that's, as we understand it, then that would be something that would resolve some of the issues we have in our mind.
Well, you must understand, Mr. O'Brien, that this was the recommendation of the Royal Commission. This has now been taken up by the Commonwealth Government, and the government's in the process of consulting the states and territories and organisations, and how it'll end up may be close or not so close to what was recommended. One doesn't know. So my simple question is to what extent is your organisation engaging in that process, or taking a position on whether it should engage in that process?
So at the moment, we haven't had any actual statement of claims, but we have had correspondence from 6 individuals. So we're formulating on the basis at the moment, still trying to determine what sort of extent of claims we would have, because I do understand from the report that each organisation would still be responsible for their own claims, which is part of the recommendation. If that was what the National Redress Scheme brought in, that possibly will affect which institutions and states would opt in for that. So I think it's still a little bit too unclear for us to commit ourselves definitively. We're still working through the process of determining just how we will handle.
You haven't ruled it out?
We haven't ruled it out, and we certainly, if there are any victims who are victims through institutional abuse from Jehovah's Witnesses, we would do everything in our power to assist them financially and spiritually.
And then finally, dealing with the question of the involvement of women in decision-making in the organisation, you're aware of the findings in relation to that.